Never before have a pair of fighters gone toe-to-toe 4 times under the UFC banner. And with that being said, of course no pair of fighters has actually fought 4 times in a row. But in the wake of the riveting flyweight title showdown between Deiveson and Figueredo and Brandon Moreno, the latest in what has quickly become one of the sport's most well-matched rivalries, all of a sudden there is a legitimate argument to be made that a 4th consecutive fight between these two is warranted. Now personally, I do think there is some reason to call for this division to be allowed some space to breathe. I know the top contenders Askar Askarov and Kai Kara-France will compete in March in what many people are considering to be a title eliminator. Just like the looming presence of Alexander Pantoja cannot be fully ignored, given that he holds 2 wins over Brandon Moreno and a fight of the night earning defeat against Figueredo. But I think at this point it's just crazy to me that there is a realistic path to us being happy with a 4th matchup between these two. And though I have opinions that challenge the need for such haste, I'll get into those later. For now, let's just talk about what went down in the UFC 270 co-main event. Cause man, that was another fantastic fight between these two absolute warriors. I've always been a supporter of the flyweight division, and also someone who was totally outraged at the fact that scrapping it due to Demetrius Johnson's dominance was ever on the cards. Like, that was definitely one of the more ridiculous sagas to emerge in what has already been a pretty ridiculous era for the sport. And fights like this one, rivalries like the one shared between Figueredo and Moreno, stand as conclusive proof that we just can't ever really be certain of what the future holds for any of these weight classes. Because from start to finish, these guys proved themselves to be among the best pound for pound fighters in the sport. And I was happy to see that both men retained their top 15 ranking on that list when it was updated this week, as meaningless as those rankings are. But as I suspected, Figueredo in many ways proved that his nasty cut down to the 125 pound limit definitely was a factor last time around, this time showing a far more Figueredo-esque version of himself than he did in their rematch. But don't get me wrong, Moreno also looked better than he did before, and like many of you, I did feel as though the bout's decision was as close as can be once the 25 minutes of action were through. But above all other things, I was hugely impressed with Deiveson's ability to properly do the weight cut this time, even shedding an extra pound to come in at 124 in what seemed to be an attempt to make a point or make a statement. And yeah, he definitely looked drawn out on the scales, but in contrast to the performance he turned in for his second showcase against Moreno, this was a different version of the Brazilian powerhouse, where in the second fight he looked flat and uninspired. This time around, he once again seemed to have that fire in his eyes, and over the course of the 5 rounds these two guys went to war, serving up an evenly matched, riveting affair that really did come down to the slightest of margins. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this content and would like to stay up to date with all of our weekly uploads, be sure to subscribe to the channel before leaving a like and a comment to keep YouTube's algorithms fully aware of the fact that we are the 125 pound kings of the platform. Or does that make us sound small or light? We're fast, we're technical, we're exciting to watch. Also, we recently set up a Patreon account, so if you want to help support the channel, the link is in the description. What really surprised me though was Moreno's ability to really hurt Figueredo, to really force him to be the one of the two to take the back step. Was that a consequence of Moreno's power, his opponent's chin, or maybe even something to do with the extent of that weight cut, no matter how much easier it seemed on the surface? Perhaps it was a bit of everything, but just as the commentary team pointed out in the broadcast, there were points in this fight where it did seem as though Moreno had the power advantage, or I suppose to put it better, he was the one who was capable of doing more damage when it came to a firefight, or at least that was the case until the moments where it wasn't. It was those knockdowns, those moments where Figgy's true danger as a finisher came into play, those were the moments that pretty much won him the fight. Because if you take away even 1 or 2 of those big moments, this was Brandon Moreno's victory. He was the busier fighter, he was the one who seemed to be hurting Figueredo more, as I said before, but as a big believer in Figueredo's fighting approach, for me it was almost a relief to see him winning in this fashion. The cardio looked good, the chin held up, despite some iffy moments. And all in all, this hugely intriguing rivalry managed to serve up an almighty curveball with the reinstatement of the former champion. But here's the thing, I don't think there's any fight under any circumstances that would warrant 4 title matchups in a row. I'm sorry, I just don't. Even if this pairing is the perfect example of how it could work, I just don't think it's fair to the division, unless the timing works out perfectly with March's showdown between Askarov and Kai Kara-France, and say for example Pantoja's knee becomes a problem again. Otherwise, as much as it feels like there is a lack of resolution here because of the draw and the 1 win apiece that these guys share, I just think that Moreno has to step aside for now to allow the division some room to maneuver. Not that I'd be angry per se if the UFC opted to go for Figueredo Moreno 4 straight away, but I just think that we're in a position right now where two potential breakout stars for the division have been established. A pair of guys who are popular, talented, and perfect representatives for a weight class that is on the verge of becoming a real fan favorite. So let these two guys take on different opponents next time around. Allow them the freedom to put the exposure and fame they have achieved to the test against new adversaries, who will bring their own personality and angle to the table in a matchup that has a higher level of exposure than it would have otherwise. I think flyweight, for the first time in a long while, or perhaps ever, is knocking on the door of being a real heavy hitter within the UFC, and I just believe that the promotion at this point in time need to play the long game with this absolute gem of a rivalry. If it's meant to be, they will find their way back together again. Because with the likes of Askarov, Kara France, Pantoja, and a slew of very interesting prospects on the rise, I would hope that Dana and his team try to nurture what this trilogy has given them, rather than risk burning it out. But what do you think of the prospect of seeing another battle between these two excellent flyweights? And if you do agree with me that the division needs to move, who do you think is going to get the next crack at flyweight gold? Do let us know your opinions in the comment section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Patreon link is in the description. Thank you for watching.